Hello, everybody, and welcome to Friends of the Force. I am your host, Sarah.
And I'm your host, Brad.
And on today's episode, we bring you a conversation with Junior Creative Executive at Lucasfilm, Emily Shkoukani, who just released Dawn of Rebellion, the latest visual guide from DK that was co-written with Pablo Hidalgo. We had the opportunity to get our hands on an early copy and go through this book and also get to chat with Emily. And it was so amazing to see all of the projects across Star Wars in this time period that this book gives us. All of our favorite things, Brad.
Yeah. We have Solo, we have the Bad Batch, we even have a little tail end of Revenge of the Sith, most importantly, Obi-Wan, Andor, Jedi Fallen Order, and Survivor, and even into Rogue One, which that is a movie that has brought us closer together as friends. And it was so cool to now have it all self-contained in one place for me to just sit there every weekend, every Sunday morning, and just comb through with a coffee in my hand. It's lovely.
Not like 5 visual guides, but one visual guide that has all of them, which is really exciting because I feel like we get visual guides that kind of encompass one movie or one point in time. And to see something that like spans a whole time period is really exciting because, like it really connects everything in Star Wars together. We have also the Timelines book, which does something similar and is also exciting, but it's Timelines can sometimes feel a little overwhelming because it is amazing, but gigantic. And this is like a much narrower version of that, which is so cool. And also it's like, it stems from the visual guides of our childhood. So can we say no to it? Absolutely not.
And it's the dawn of rebellion. I mean, rebellion and hope are the key themes of Star Wars. So to have a focus on that aspect, even in the darkest times, is pretty cool because you got those characters that even like Bail Organa is included in this one, and getting an entry for him and getting an entry for Marva Andor. So cool that those characters share the same book. It's like wild to think about.
It makes me now, we pose a question to all of our authors and folks that come on the show. We're like, what 2 characters from any time period would you want to have a conversation? I want them to have a conversation.
Ooh, Marva Andor and Bail Organa?
Yes. Think about it.
I'm thinking about it. Well, we asked Emily the same question, so you'll have to stay tuned to the end of our interview when they give their answer. So, but yeah, it was such an honor. We love to getting the chance to talk with Emily, and both of us are prequel kids. Emily was a prequel kid. And so it was nice to bond on that and also see the fruits of the labor of being a prequel kid now paving the way for Emily to be helping to shape stories going forward and add their voice to this visual guide, which I think is a must buy for any Star Wars fan.
I do not disagree. So without further ado, let's turn it over to our interview with Emily Shkoukani.
Emily, welcome to Friends of the Force. We are so happy to have you today.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Sarah and I both love this book, and we're so excited to talk about it today. But first thing I'd love to start with is, how does it feel to have Dawn of Rebellion now out on bookshelves?
It feels amazing. I went immediately the first day that it was available on bookshelves, and I went to the store. I saw somebody buy it, which was like such a huge moment for me, I guess, like actually witnessing somebody going to pick it up at the store. Other than just me and my partner there to go see my name on a book. But yeah, so it's been super exciting. I've been hearing so many positive things about it, so I'm glad everyone's been enjoying it so far.
I feel like visual dictionaries, visual guides, these are some of the most fun and timeless reference books in Star Wars. I still have all of my prequel trilogy, like original visual dictionaries, and I cherish them so much. So I'm so glad to have this one, which covers a time that is so rich and exciting, on my shelves as well. And I know that I will be keeping it for many, many years to come and referencing it on the podcast probably a dozen times because that's the name of the game here. But we start off every podcast just wanting to get to know a little bit more about you and your story with Star Wars. So what is your personal history with Star Wars and ultimately what brought you to Lucasfilm?
Yeah, so like a lot of people, my love for Star Wars kind of started when I was younger. I was exposed to it through a cousin of mine who I he was playing it one day in his room, and I happened to stumble in, and I saw some lightsabers and some Ewoks, and I was very enamored by it. And I I would say though that like my true like devotion to Star Wars probably didn't start until I was like I saw one in theaters though, and that wasn't until Revenge of the Sith. So that was 2005, so it took a minute for me to actually see one in theaters. And once I did, I was just completely like, I am devoting my entire life to whatever this galaxy is. Because it was just captivating, honestly. So that's kind of like how my personal history is with Star Wars. But then in terms of like how I got into Lucasfilm and how I like started all that up, I guess it really came down to the DVD extras and behind the scenes footage. I loved watching those when I was growing up. That was like, I couldn't get enough of Star Wars. So I was like, what else could I possibly go to? And that was the next best thing, was just hitting the special um extras on on the screen there. And yeah, I got to see all those people making Star Wars, and that was super inspiring, and I just wanted to be like them, honestly. And that inspired me, and I had been looking at jobs at Lucasfilm since I was like 12 years old, honestly. Like it's just been since I was very young that I was like, I got to get there. I got to be telling these stories or something. Like I got to be part of this. It just looks like everyone's having such a good time. And I just wanted to be part of that, honestly. And yeah, that kind of got me this far, like I spent a lot of time, like I said, just devoting my time to Star Wars after that. And um, yeah, it got me in the door at Lucasfilm, and I'm eternally thankful for that.
I love the shout out for the special features, because I always say they don't make them like they used to back in early 2000s. You could pull up the Revenge of the Sith DVD and like, click the left button and there's like a secret bonus menu or whatever. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much stuff.
I
And
know.
we just had The Mandalorian get released on physical, and it's got a lot of bonus features there too. So that's exciting that like bonus features are making a comeback on physical media, because they are so important, and they inspired people like yourself.
Totally.
Also, Revenge of the Sith, I just have to say, yes, I'm right there with you on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
This book was a collaboration. I mean, I guess with DK as well, but also with Pablo Hidalgo. So what was it like to collaborate with Pablo Hidalgo on this book? And how did you work together to define this work's scope with the parts of the rebellion that you wanted to spend time on in the book?
Yeah, so Pablo, first of all, is great. He was super supportive the whole time, but also like gave me my own independence to go off and like write and be on my own and kind of do things in my own way. Or when I needed him, lean on him. He was just anything I needed. He was great. Um, in terms of like, I guess like the collaboration process and how we like kind of divvied up the work. In actuality, the book was kind of pitched before I was part of it, and Pablo requested that one of the chapters be written by me for through DK, and so DK was excited about the idea, and they reached out to me, and I was definitely on board. And so I actually just wrote the Dark Times chapter. So that chapter focuses heavily on Obi-Wan Kenobi series and the Dark Times. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of like how it came about. It was an idea that was already formed. Pablo was definitely going to do it. He invited me into it, and yeah, I can't thank him enough.
Now you're in. You're going to get more calls about doing the visual guides for sure.
I am here to answer those calls.
The Dark Times chapter is one of my favorites, just because one, you get the Obi-Wan Kenobi spread looking in all of Ewan McGregor's glory. Amazing.
Yes.
But I mean, going back to Revenge of the Sith, like we're huge fans. That was one of the first movies I remember vividly seeing in the theaters. Phantom Menace was my true first, but Revenge of the Sith elevated that so much more. What was it like to explore that time period after Revenge of the Sith?
Yeah, it's like an honor to work at Lucasfilm every day, honestly. Like it's uh I can't believe it, honestly. But again, like I said, like Revenge of the Sith, it's just what, again, just like you said, it got me hooked. Well, I don't know what was in that movie, but they something was in
Magic.
it, and I was
Yeah.
consuming it. Yeah, I was consuming it. I was here for it. And so yeah, yeah, I just I it was really like a dream to even touch something that was tangentially related to it. So to touch like this visual guide that would expand on the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, which expands on Obi-Wan and Darth Vader and Leia and all this stuff, including new things. Um, it was, yeah, it's just truly a dream come true, that I was asked to do something. And also, I just want to say that, like, you know, Revenge of the Sith means a lot to me and means a lot to people who grew up with it, but it means a lot to Pablo too. And Pablo worked on that movie. He is in that movie. And not to mention, he also worked on the Obi-Wan Kenobi series in a way more intimate fashion than I ever did. And he still reserved this chapter for me. So I can't thank him enough that he would do that just because I was a quote unquote prequel kid that just had a love for Revenge of the Sith.
That's really awesome.
One of us.
I specifically collect Liberty Dies Padme like pins. Like in that one outfit. It's so foundational to like my existence.
Yes.
So yeah, I get it. You know, you mentioned kind of like the expansion of this time, and we've gotten so much of that over the past handful of years, kind of with Rogue One, Rebels, et cetera, which are all kind of throughout this book. And now with Andor and Obi-Wan Kenobi, both well loved and enjoyed. Were there any, you know, within your chapter or throughout the book, any moments, locations, and or pun intended, characters that you were eager to like write about or see the entries for in the final product?
Yeah. The first time I saw a spread, I was so psyched. I mean, it was just a mock-up and it had like, you know, lorem ipsum text all over it and it was just all gibberish. But it was so exciting to see one. Um, and I think Alderaan was maybe the first spread that I saw, which was super cool. But the something that I was really excited about was getting Leia's spread. I am a prequel kid, but for some reason I was like, I was just so I loved the performance of her in Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I loved this rebellious little spirit that she had. And I just thought that it just felt very easy to, I guess, to write about her. And it came easier than I ever thought it would. Especially again, saying I'm a prequel kid over and over again, but like I really do come from those movies. So to find this connection to the OT is always like nice, because I don't get to have as many intimate moments with it because I just wasn't around when they were coming out.
I fully understand that. And there was a great moment when Brad and I we were at Celebration and we were sitting down and watching the show as it was airing. Just like seeing Leia just like sobbing.
Yes.
I don't know. It all kind of clicked together in that moment. So I definitely am right there.
Yeah, it really is like a show that bridges, you know, the two eras together, and it does it in such a good way of, you know, having characters on both ends and meeting them in the middle and experiencing them in a different time than we've seen them before. Yeah, it is just, yeah, to again, like you guys asked earlier, it's just like such an honor to touch it even tangentially.
Yeah, that show is a warm hug. And most importantly, we get more Jimmy Schmitz, who's also on the Leia and Alderaan spread with Brea. Can't forget Brea either, but love having them in the mix. You mentioned seeing some of the spreads, and one of the questions we had was, what was the collaboration like with the design and layout team? Because we weren't sure kind of what influences what, and like how involved were you and Pablo with making some of those design element choices?
Yeah. So I guess I could speak from my experience with it. And I know Pablo's was probably a little bit different just because he worked on more of the book and he also was in it a little bit sooner than I was. But for me, basically my understanding was there's like the concept and an outline that gets approved, and then based on that, spreads start coming through for Pablo and I. Based on the outline, it's pretty detailed enough that they could put together spreads, so then we start getting spreads of what DK has essentially like kind of mocked up of what they think are going to be the major like images or spread types of like, okay, this is going to be a character spread, or this is going to be um, a planet spread, etc. Um, and then really it's just, Pablo and I's job to fill in the blanks of all that text that belongs next to all those images. Um, so the images are kind of decided for us, but at the same time, we're allowed to like give an input, of course, like if we have an idea of a different image that might feel better for the book, that's totally our prerogative to like request those types of things. Or sometimes there will just be blank spots, placeholder spots of where an image might go, and they'll ask for our recommendations of what might fit best there. I don't have any examples off the top of my head, but those were just like things that we would do that's how it was with the spreads when we originally got them. So, but yeah, so that was kind of the process.
What is like most important to you to working on an entry? The research and the creative process. I imagine there's so many, like literally the place for resources and all the collections and information stored at Lucasfilm. Having to distill that into a pretty finite amount of space on the page. Is there anything essential that you are going for, and what sort of resources did you utilize?
Yeah. I guess for me, when I was growing up and reading these books, I just wanted, to get as much information nuggets as I could out of them, like I didn't know what I was looking for, but everything was the right answer. So that for me, it was just about injecting more knowledge into the visuals of what we were discussing. So for me, I guess it was Obi-Wan Kenobi. But yeah, it was that's what was important to me, was just like making sure people got like information out of like almost every sentence that I could, without like also um, you know, saying overly too much that would like be crazy. So yeah, and then in terms of like my research or like my creative process, this was probably the most fun part, because I got to go back to I immediately picked up a visual guide. I just picked up Pablo's Rogue One guide, and I was like, all right, I just got to get like my head in the visual guide space again, because it's been a minute since we did one. So I was just like, I need to get back into it. And I just picked up the visual guide and I just started reading through it. And then I picked up my old prequel visual guides. You were just talking about them, Sarah. And yeah, I too still have my original like prequel DK visual guides and everything. And I picked those up. I read through them as inspiration as well. I went back to Obi-Wan Kenobi, rewatched it. I went back to the prequels just for fun, just as, a cherry on top.
It's work.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, sorry, everyone.
Billable hours.
Please don't contact me right now. I'm watching the prequels.
I wish that could be my out of office message at work. That would be amazing.
But yeah, like I said, that was such like the best part was gathering up all the resources that I wanted to kind of help me with this project.
I feel like it's potentially a daunting task to be like, okay, I've got 3 sentences on this character, how to explain them. Because I know for me, I'm like very wordy. I'll write 1,000. Like somebody's like, oh, why should I get into the High Republic? And I'm like, here is my scroll essay of why you should read. I'm not very good at distilling it down.
Yeah, it can be tough. I also like the process that I went through was kind of asking Pablo what his process was, and he sent me stuff from what he had previously done and other visual guides, and I kind of just like worked off of his homework essentially. And that's how I like essentially figured out the process. But yeah, in terms of like actually writing things down, um, sometimes it was like I can say 1,000 things about this, or there's already been 1,000 things said about this. So what's something new that I could say? So it really could vary on the spectrum.
I feel like some of these visual guides could be a big challenge, especially with something like this that takes place over so many years. You're basically filling in those 19 years between Revenge of the Sith and Rogue One / A New Hope. And what do you think may be surprising for readers to know about that creative process? And like, you know, we take it for granted because it's already a finished product in our hands and we're just going through it. But like, what would be a surprise for us to know about when you're actually going through that process?
Yeah, I think that maybe Pablo and my name are on the cover of the book, but if you flip to the last page, there's a list of credits of people who also worked on the book, and I think people might be surprised how many other creatives are involved in this book. It's not just Pablo and I just making these calls. Like, it really is the layout and design team creating these mocked spreads for Pablo and I to visually work off of. And it's the asset teams that decide which images get to make it into the final product, and have the best resolution, for readers in that final product and whatnot. And it's the editors that make sure that Pablo and I are sounding as great as we possibly can in text. So really, everyone is making all these creative decisions to um, make this type of product. So it really takes all those people. So yeah, I encourage everyone to go into the back of the book and read all those names because they're all as much a part of this book as Pablo and I.
I think it's always so amazing to think about, even though it's just a novel, how many people touch that piece of work in order for it to be the final, book you can go buy in a store. But truly, even more so, as you just spoke about, with something that has so many connected teams and so many connected resources that it's pulling from in order to have it such both be visual and informative and be beautiful and be bound and printed and on a shelf. So yeah, I have a lot of respect for that and all of the emails that probably came along with that back and forth between everybody.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's been almost like a full year now, I think, since I was invited into the project and since it's come out now and doing this. So yeah, it's been a lot of emails, a lot of people, but it's been great.
It's really something. And I think too, one other aspect of this book, which I'm not sure how much of this part you had worked on with Pablo, but there's a countdown to Civil War timeline. And Sarah and I love a good timeline in a Star Wars book. We love a map that's also in this book. It's fantastic. Um, did you have any part in that countdown to Civil War timeline with Pablo? And if you did, like, what were some of the challenges in trying to nail down that timeline? Because we know that Star Wars and its timelines can be complicated sometimes.
Yeah, they absolutely can. I mean, we wrote a whole book on it, and it was insane.
Right. I don't. That book is a feat. It's such a feat.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So for the timeline, Pablo wrote the timeline, but yeah, I reviewed it and everything too, and I kind of just assessed it. Pablo is great at what he does, so I didn't really have many notes for him. But from my perspective, I was just kind of thinking about, um, what is like the story that we're telling with this timeline, and what's the information that people are going to be getting out of it, and also, are we making the right references? Are we catching all the right people and places and other things that might be important to the story? So that's kind of like how I was looking at it. And also when we were writing this book, a huge thing that I kept thinking about was just like, this is the dawn of rebellion. Like, that's the title of this, like we need to be heading towards the rebellion at all times, and I really took that as like my mantra, I guess, throughout writing and throughout reviewing and assessing the book. So, um, I just wanted to make sure that, yeah, with every page, we were heading towards that rebellion. We were heading towards that hope that Star Wars is all about.
It's like the eternal countdown clock. Even if it's not literal, it's kind of always omnipresent in anything that happens in this time frame for sure.
Totally.
I have to say too, if you had told me when I was a 10-year-old that, hey, we're going to have enough stuff to fill in a countdown to Civil War from Revenge of the Sith to A New Hope, I wouldn't have believed it, And I think it's so cool that we've gotten all these stories that you can make a countdown to Civil War with so many different parts of that timeline. And I just love that it's all like self-contained in this book as a prequel kid for both Sarah and I, getting the Bad Batch in there, and Solo even makes an appearance. There's just so much richness to this time period. So yeah, just wanted to say, like, shout out that, like, we're here in this time now. We get to have so many different stories, like post Revenge of the Sith. Who would have thunk?
Absolutely. Yeah. That timeline is great, of like literally referencing everything. Like you said, Solo, the Bad Batch, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and all of the comics and stuff, and some novels as well. So yeah, he did a really good job of capturing everything that you can in 2 pages.
Crazy. It's also amazing to know that, like, we are ultimately still getting stories in this time period. Even though the book is out and it's beautiful and there's so much information in it, this story of the Star Wars galaxy and this time period in particular isn't over. Like, we are getting an Andor season 2, and I imagine another season of the Bad Batch, and probably other stuff in the future too that will sprinkle in, like, details and that sort of stuff from this time frame. And this is not a gotcha, I promise. Is there any, like, upcoming project that's been announced that you're super excited about, whether it be in this time period or any other in Star Wars?
Yeah. I'm always excited about all Star Wars, honestly. But stuff that's been making me excited. First, I'll give a shout out to the High Republic. It's been my favorite project to work on as a Lucasfilm employee and also as a Star Wars fan. It's been such an incredible initiative, a project, etc., to be part of and to see grow. But in terms of other new stuff, I'm really excited about The Acolyte. I can't say much about it. There's not a lot that's been released about it, but
Right.
I will
No
say,
gotchas.
yeah, I will say that I am excited about the premise of it.
We, based on the limited knowledge we have, we are, like, way more excited than maybe we should be, with, like, literally like 2 sentences worth of information and just like one panel, but we are really very much anticipating it as well.
Yeah. I mean, the High Republic. That's the answer that I'm giving you guys. Is the High Republic is awesome.
I literally have a bookshelf.
Yeah.
Literally have a bookshelf that's just all my High Republic books.
Yeah, mine's right here too.
Yeah.
We were bringing attention the other day when we did the other week we did our Eye of Darkness episode. We're like, we've talked about the High Republic for 50 hours. That's
on
not a normal amount of time for people
normally.
to. Yeah, but we're so excited about The Acolyte. I mean, how can you say no to it when you had a Wookiee with Leslie Headland on the stage and Ernesto Rowe photo? Oh my gosh, so exciting.
Yes.
Cannot wait. We have a fun hypothetical that we like to ask a lot of different authors who join us on the show. But if you could have a character from any Star Wars era sit down and have a conversation with somebody that's featured in the Dawn of Rebellion book, so anybody kind of within that time frame, which 2 characters would you choose and what would they talk about?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm probably going to go back to the High Republic, because why not? But I would take, so I know I just talked about how Dawn of Rebellion, Star Wars is about hope, but I also love the villains. So I would love to take Marchion Ro the big bad villain of High Republic and have him have a conversation with like Vader, and just like, you know, just discuss their evil plans and how they're constantly being thwarted by rebellions. um, but yeah, I just think that villains talking is an interesting premise for me.
I think it'd be so interesting to see these two characters as well because they have different approaches. I think they have different mindsets as villains. Marchion Ro, he's got a very chaotic point of view that I think Vader's a little bit more reserved.
Maybe. Sure. Yeah.
I mean, especially as time goes on, but yeah. Ooh. Now I'm going to be thinking about that for the rest of the day.
Yeah, I mean, like Marchion Ro, like you said, like he's a little chaotic, but at the same time, Vader can be chaotic, but I think what drives them is so fundamentally different, you know, like Vader is so motivated by his feelings, and Marchion Ro is just so like doesn't even have feelings, I don't think. so it's I would just love to see them have a conversation about maybe their feelings, honestly. Maybe the villains should just talk about their feelings.
Yes.
I'm in support of that. I got to imagine Marchion Ro telling Darth Vader, "You're being too emotional, man." He's just like, "What did you say?"
Like it's not all about that. It's about the chaos. It's about how we can win. And he's like, "Yeah, but."
Oh my gosh, that's a great answer. So our last question here, we love to ask every guest this as well, is at the end of the day, you've had a long journey with Star Wars as a fan, and now in your career. What does Star Wars mean to you?
This is a big question. What does Star Wars mean to me? I mean, it can mean so many things. But at the end of the day, I really think it comes down to like connections. I was introduced to it by a cousin of mine, and that created a huge connection between me and him. And then I created a huge connection with the fandom, and I created this connection with Lucasfilm. And now I'm connecting with you guys here. You know, it really is all about connection for me. I make so many of them every day, and that's what honestly makes Star Wars happen, is connections. So for me, it's all about connection.
Brad and I met through Star Wars, and he's my best friend in the world. So I also really get that, and I'm so grateful for Star Wars for changing that trajectory a little bit, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Emily, thank you so much for joining us. And for all of you listening, Dawn Rebellion is on bookshelves right now. Go get it. It's one of my favorite reference books out there at the moment. So, and hopefully many more of those sorts of visual guides to come. We need a resurgence of them. They're wonderful. Where can our listeners find you online? And is there anything else that you have coming up that you would like to give a shout out to?
Nothing in particular personal to me. As always, please check out starwars.com. But that's where all the news is at. And then in terms of finding me, you can find me on Twitter at X. I don't know what we're calling it, Twitter or X, at Shkouks. That's SHKOUKS.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and hope you have a great rest of your year, and may the Force be with you.
Thank you. May the Force be with you.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to our conversation with Emily Shkoukani. Once again, Dawn of Rebellion is now on bookshelves. Huge shout out to DK for sending us a copy so that we could have this conversation and for organizing it as well. For all of you who want to hear more from us, you can find us on all of our socials, including Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, you name it. And we also are on any podcast platform of your choice. So if you want to hear more, subscribe to the show, tell all your friends about it, leave us a 5-star review if you enjoyed it. Helps other folks come into the conversation with us and talk about all things Star Wars, whether it's the High Republic or Rebellion.
Absolutely. We also have a Patreon that really does, honest to God, help keep the lights on here at Friends of the Forest. So we are super, super grateful for Ben, Brian, Cheryl, Clay, Deborah, Emma, Huang, Jennifer, Katie, Knights of Ren, Leanne, Logan, Lucy, Lindsay, Matthew, Rob, Saber Bouquet, Santa, Sky Talkers, Steven, Tom, Travis, and our newest patrons, AJ and David. Thank you all so much for your support. We do appreciate it. And to everybody that listens to our podcast episodes, long or short, we're very thankful for you. Hope you are having a lovely, safe, healthy holiday season and turn over to the new year. Please stay well, take care of yourselves and your loved ones.
Absolutely. Thank you all once again. And until next time, may the Force be with you always.